Before my husband passed away, he wrote a will leaving all his property to his first love. Holding my hand, he said with a tone of guilt, Song Jin, I've let you down in this life. If there is a next life, I will make it up to you. My son also advised, Mom, although Dad left all the family property to Aunt Sue, you've held the position of the legal wife for so many years. That should be enough. Looking at these two men with similar features, I coldly withdrew my hand and said calmly to Qin Jiangyi, no need to wait for the next life. In this life, I won't give you the chance to let me down. 1. Qin was about to breathe his last, but our son hurriedly brought Susie over. I looked at my son in disbelief. Your father is about to leave us. Instead of rushing over, why are you bringing an outsider here? Mom, I know Dad is fading fast. That's why I called Aunt Susie over. She must be the one Dad wants to see most before he passes away. Saying this, our son ignored my shocked expression and pulled Susie into the hospital room. At that moment, my head was buzzing, and I couldn't quite understand what my son meant by that. Susie used to be my son's nanny when he was little. Later, when he grew older and no longer needed a nanny, I let her go. But after being dismissed, Susie didn't leave. Instead, she rented an apartment near our home. She said she had developed a bond with my son and always treated him as her own. That's why she lived nearby, so she could lend a hand whenever possible. I only felt ashamed at the time, so I even gave Susie a big red envelope, but I never imagined that she would become the person my husband most wanted to see before he passed away. Just as I finally realized what was happening and pushed the door open to enter the hospital room, I heard my husband, who had almost lost the ability to speak just moments before, excitedly take Susie's hand and say, 1111, my 1111. I was so afraid I wouldn't see you before I died. Susie was already in tears. Brother Jiangyi, what will I do if you leave? Don't be afraid, 1111, even if I'm gone, when Chu will take care of you. Qin Jiangyi tenderly wiped the tears from the corner of Susie's eyes with his finger. The son immediately nodded and said, Aunt Susie, don't worry, even if my dad is gone, I will take good care of you. Upon hearing this, Susie threw herself into Qin Jiangyi's arms. I knew Brother Jiangyi is the best. Qin Jiangyi patted Susie's back gently and said, Don't worry, I've made all the arrangements for you. I've already written a will leaving all the family property to you. Once I pass away, you can inherit everything. With Wen Chu looking after you, I can rest assured. Just as the two were pouring their hearts out to each other, I couldn't hold back any longer and interrupted them directly. What do you mean by leaving all the family property to her? That scoundrel, cheating is one thing, but how dare he set his sights on my money? Hearing my voice, Qin Jiangyi finally looked at me, a trace of guilt in his eyes. I remember before Susie came, he lay in bed lifeless, completely unresponsive to anything I said. Song Jin, I know I've let you down in this life, but there's no other way. Susie is the eternal white moonlight in my heart. With her, there's no room for anyone else. Qin Jiangyi spoke with deep emotion, but I only found it ridiculous. I don't know what kind of story they have between them, but if his heart only belongs to this woman, why did he marry me and have children with me? Mom, Dad and Aunt Sue were childhood sweethearts to begin with. If it weren't for Dad's career back then, they wouldn't have separated. And you wouldn't have been able to marry Dad either. Over all these years, you've already enjoyed the position of the legitimate wife, so don't make Dad leave with a troubled heart anymore. I couldn't even be bothered to look at this son who always takes others' side, and just stared fixedly at the man on the bed. Qin Jiangyi, nearly 70 years old, even at this moment when he showed signs of approaching death, still gave people a feeling of gentle, refined elegance and handsome charm. But for the first time, I felt a sense of disgust just from seeing him. 2. Perhaps noticing the intense aversion in my eyes, Qin Jiang's lifeless eyes flickered with a hint of sadness. Song Jin, come here. With one arm wrapped around Su Qian's waist, he extended his other hand toward me, gesturing for me to approach. Although I was extremely reluctant to get close to him at that moment, driven by curiosity about what nonsense he might spout, I couldn't help but walk over. As soon as I approached, Qin Jiangyi grabbed my hand and said, I know I've wronged you in this lifetime, but this is my only wish before I die. Please grant it to me. I frowned and remained silent. Even if you don't grant it, I've already made my will, there's nothing you can change about it. I looked coldly at this dying man and at Sushi, who sat beside him with a hint of a smug smile on her face. How did you know I couldn't change? I sneered coldly. Song Jin, I've wronged you in this lifetime, and it's my fault. It has nothing to do with Su Qian. If there is a next life, I will make it up to you then. Please don't bully Su Qian, Qin Jiangyi said nervously. But his voice was already faint and weak due to his extreme physical exhaustion. Seeing him in this near-death state, the initial sadness I felt vanished, and I coldly withdrew my hand. No need to wait for the next life. In this very lifetime, I won't give you the chance to wrong me again. My words seemed to deliver the final blow to Qin Jiangyi. He reached out agitatedly to grab my hand but couldn't manage to grasp it no matter how hard he tried. He shouted anxiously, Song Jin, Song Jin, Song Jin. But because he had no energy left, his voice grew softer and softer until his outstretched hand fell onto the hospital bed, his head tilted to the side, and he was completely still. Seeing this, my son immediately went to check on him. After discovering that Qin Jiangyi had already passed away, he turned to me angrily and said, Mom, what are you doing? Are you deliberately making Dad's passing uneasy? Looking at my son before me, in his 40s but showing few signs of aging. He resembled his father greatly, blessed with good looks, but now it seems he not only inherited his father's good looks but also his father's ruthless heart. How can we let him rest in peace by giving all the family assets to an outsider? I sneered, money, 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 that's all you care about. How could Auntie Sue be an outsider? She was the woman my father loved most, and she's the aunt who took care of me since I was a child. In my eyes, she's like a second mother to me. What's wrong with my father giving her the family money? When Chu, Auntie always knew, all these years of caring for you weren't in vain. Su Qian covered her mouth upon hearing this, moved to tears, but I only found it laughable that such words could come from my own son's mouth. This doesn't sound like something a man in his 40s would say. It's clear that I must admit my parenting has been a failure. 3. Qin Wenchu, I must remind you, you still have a share in the family assets. Are you willing to give that up too? The son stiffened his neck and said, Why can't I give up? To let my father rest in peace, I'm willing to give up. Upon hearing this, Suze's eyes lit up again and again, and she was so moved that she threw herself into her son's arms. Good child. Your father entrusted me to you before he died, and he was right to do so. Aunt Sue, don't worry, even though my father is gone, I'm still here. The son patted Suze's shoulder and said, That sounds nice. You say you're giving up, but do you dare sign a property waiver? I looked at the dead man on the bed and decided to step back and find a seat. It was at that moment that I witnessed something incredible. Qin Jiangyi, his soul actually started to float, and I could see it. He drifted over to Su Shi and Qin Wenchu. Seeing how united the two were, he was deeply moved and threw himself forward to hug them. But because he was in a soul state, he passed right through their bodies. It was then that he seemed to realize he was dead. In a soul state, however, he seemed to quickly accept this reality and immediately joined forces with the two of them, shouting at me, Song Jin, you petty woman, my son is right, all you care about is money. You have no understanding of the pure love between me and Su Qian. I simply acted as if I couldn't see or hear him and instead looked straight at my son, signaling with my eyes for him to answer the question I had just asked, because I realized that in this room, it seemed only I could see Qin Jiangyi's spirit. The two people across from me couldn't see him, otherwise, when Qin Jiangyi rushed toward them earlier, those two wouldn't have had no reaction at all, receiving my signal. Qin Wenchu hesitated for a moment but still spoke up. Why wouldn't I dare? My father has already made his will. I support my father's decision. If we need to sign an agreement, then let's sign it. For Aunt Sue's sake, I have no objections. Son, don't be foolish. You can't sign it. If you sign, you won't be able to help Aunt Sue fight for the inheritance. Your mother is very shrewd. She'll definitely compete with Aunt Sue for it. Hearing his son's willingness to sign the property waiver, Qin Jiangyi grew extremely anxious and tried to warn him, but unfortunately, Qin Wenchu couldn't hear his voice at all, so I just curled my lips coldly. Is that so? I don't believe it unless you sign it in front of me. My son seemed not to have expected such a request from me and froze on the spot. After a long, awkward pause, he finally said, "All the assets belong to Aunt Sue. I definitely won't compete with her for them, so there's no need to sign an agreement, right?" Su Qian was initially quite excited when she heard what I said, but upon hearing her son's words, she frowned almost imperceptibly. However, she hid her emotions well in front of the man and immediately said to her son, "The property your father left behind is rightfully yours, even if you wanted it. Auntie wouldn't fight you for it. There really is no need to sign an agreement." These words were spoken beautifully, but they put Qin Wenchu in a difficult position. She didn't say she believed he wouldn't compete with her, but instead said it was originally his. This made it inappropriate for Qin Wenchu not to sign the agreement. Qin Wenchu stared blankly at Su Qian, but he didn't get angry because of it. Instead, he spoke understandingly, "You're right. Aunt Sue lost her father, and even with me as a support, she still feels insecure. Then I'll sign it to put your mind at ease." Aunt Sue, watching her son make up his mind. It would be a lie to say she didn't feel heartache. The son who was bossing me around is being so considerate in front of Susie. Even though he could see through Susie's little schemes, he still chose to accommodate her. For Qin Jiangyi was also stunned upon hearing this. With a pained expression, he seemed to be blaming himself. "It's my fault for not being prepared. I forgot that 1111 is an insecure little girl. But if this document is signed, Song Jin definitely won't let go of the family assets." I couldn't help but shake my head upon hearing this. Damn, a 60-something-year-old little girl is something I've never seen before. Even though Qin Wenchu was extremely unwilling, under the provocation from me and Susie, he still found paper, a pen, and an ink pad, wrote the property relinquishment agreement, and pressed his fingerprint on it. To make it more legally effective, I directly connected with the notary office and had it notarized there. After completing everything, I immediately got up and prepared to leave. Over there, Susie and Qin Wenchu were still hugging each other emotionally, crying bitterly in each other's arms. Suddenly realizing I was about to leave, Susie quickly stepped forward to stop me. "Sister Song Jin, why are you leaving already? Should I stay here for a meal if I'm not leaving?" Even though I had left her speechless, Susie didn't get angry. Instead, she said gently, "Sister Song Jin, I know you're upset about losing the family property. But no matter what, Brother Jiang Yi was your husband. How could you just leave his body behind and go off on your own?" That's right, just moments ago, when they were arguing back and forth over the family property, these two hadn't given a thought to the fact that their beloved lover and respected father had just passed away. As for me, just a worthless man, why should I care when he died? The person he loved most is you, and his son is here too. Can't you handle his remains? What do you need me to stay for? Seriously, you took my family property, but you're not even willing to give Qin Jiangyi a proper burial. Susie was pushed back several steps by my words. "No, sister, I just think that since he is your husband, you should handle his funeral arrangements." Hearing this, I sneered. "I don't want to. Why should I handle the funeral arrangements for a disgusting old man who betrayed me?" With that, I ignored her and continued walking out. But then my son became displeased. He blocked my way and said, "Mom, how can you treat Aunt Sue like this? She has generously let you have Dad for decades, and now you're being so petty. Auntie Sue was just reminding you to handle my dad's funeral arrangements. Why are you reacting like this? Aren't you hurting Auntie Sue's feelings? After all, she just lost the most important person in her life." I looked at my son as if he were a fool. If it weren't for the genetic testing we've done during our annual checkups over the years, I'd seriously wonder if this idiot is really my own flesh and blood. Haven't I left the most important person in her life to her? What more do you want? I rolled my eyes and continued walking out. But Qin Wenchu grabbed me and wouldn't let go. "Arranging a funeral costs money. Mom, even if you don't care about Dad, you still have to provide the money. Why should I pay for the funeral of the most important person in her life?" I gave him a puzzled look. Qin Jiangyi, hearing me say this, floated his soul next to me and said with deep sorrow, "Song Jin, even if I, Qin Jiangyi, have wronged you in this lifetime, we've still shared a harmonious life for decades. Are you really unwilling to pay for my funeral expenses now?" 5. Qin Wenchu also yelled at me, "Mom, no matter what, he is still my dad, how can you just ignore him?" At that point, I was truly laughing in disbelief. "You said it yourself. He's your dad, why aren't you handling his funeral arrangements? You're 43, not 3. Can't you even manage your own father's affairs after he's passed away?" The more I spoke, the more speechless I felt. Have I really failed so badly at raising my child all these years, a person in their 40s? Yet they have no sense of responsibility at all. Qin Wenchu was left speechless by my words. Even Qin Jiangyi was shocked by my words and looked at his son, as if just realizing that this son should be the one to handle his affairs. Instead, Sushi stepped forward and shielded Qin Wenchu behind her. "Sister, why are you picking on a child? No matter what, Wenchu is your son. If the child doesn't understand, we as elders should teach him. Then why don't you, as the elder, teach him? Why are you stopping me?" I couldn't help but roll my eyes again. "Sister, you know I don't have a job. If it weren't for brother Jiangyi helping me all these years, my life would have been difficult. As for the money for handling the affairs, sister, could you give it to me? This time, I really didn't go out anymore." If she hadn't mentioned it, I would have forgotten. It seems that Qin Jiangyi has spent a lot of money on this woman over the years, keeping her in luxury and comfort. In the end, I will definitely make her spit that money back out. "What's the matter, Miss Su? You took the family assets Qin Jiangyi left you, and now you're unwilling to pay for his funeral arrangements," I sneered. "Song Jin, don't slander my 1111. How could she be unwilling to spend money on me? She's just. Qin Jiangyi, who was anxiously making excuses for his white moonlight, couldn't come up with a reasonable explanation for a long time. If he weren't in a state of being a soul, his appearance would surely be even more comical right now. "Sister, the family assets are still with you now. I truly have no money. I need you to give me the family assets so I can have the funds to arrange brother Jiangyi's funeral," Sushi said without a hint of shame or guilt. "That's right, Song Jin. Hurry up and hand over the family assets to 1111. Otherwise, how will she have the money to arrange my funeral?" Qin Jiangyi immediately seized on the excuse and glared at me angrily. It's a shame no one saw how ugly his expression was. "You're already thinking about the inheritance right after he died. Susie, you've got some nerve. If you want the inheritance, fine. Take the will and sue me in court." I couldn't be bothered to argue with her any further and was genuinely ready to leave this time. "Mom, what do you mean by that? That's my father's inheritance. How dare you seize my father's assets?" Qin Wenchu shouted at my retreating figure. "Your father's inheritance? That's our marital property. Damn it. Did he think he could just give away my money with a will after he died? Don't even think about it." After saying that, I left the hospital directly. As I walked out of the hospital gate, I suddenly noticed that Qin Jiangyi had followed me out. He didn't seem to be doing it voluntarily. He just appeared near me as I stepped out of the hospital. What's going on? I need to stay and take care of 1111. So why am I following Song Jin out? He ran desperately toward the hospital, yet no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get inside. In fact, as I walked away, the distance between him and the hospital only grew larger. It was then that he realized his range of movement was limited to the area around me. 6. Song Jin, go back. I need to check on Qianqian. She's never been treated like this before. She needs me to take care of her. Qin Jiangyi anxiously floated to my side and spoke in a commanding tone. But I simply acted as though I couldn't see or hear him and continued walking toward the parking lot. "Song Jin, please go back. Okay, you won't handle my funeral arrangements, you refuse to pay for it, and now you don't even want to look at me a little longer. Go back and see me. Let me spend more time with 1111. Please." Qin Jiangyi kept chattering nonstop in my ear. At first, he was ordering me to go back, but when he realized I couldn't hear him, he started begging. His words were so disgusting that I almost cursed out loud on the spot. In the end, I had to put on my headphones to suppress the urge to swear. When I got home, I went straight to the study to contact my lawyer. I thought Qin Jiangyi would follow me in, but the moment I stepped into the study, I realized his soul had actually been repelled. Puzzled, I walked around the study and suddenly remembered a painting of the 3 pure ones hanging on the wall. It was something my father had left me years ago. said to have been blessed. It seemed Qin Jiangyi was being kept out by that painting. That was just as well. I never wanted to be alone with Qin Jiangyi in the first place, especially in his soul form. He was really giving me a headache with all his noise. I contacted a lawyer and explained my situation and what I wanted to achieve. The lawyer replied quickly, "Ms. Song, rest assured, the assets listed in Mr. Qin's will are your marital joint property. He has no right to give them all away. If it's joint property, then it should be split equally between us." Right, does that mean we have to give his half to Su Qian? I don't want to give her any of it. No need. Ms. Song, Mr. Qin's will clearly violates public order and good morals. As long as we provide evidence, the court will not support it. In fact, the will itself is the best evidence. However, according to the regulations, Mr. Qin's estate should be divided equally between you and your son. If your son wants to give the money to Ms. Su, you have no right to stop him. Hearing this, I felt relieved. That won't be a problem. My son has already waived his right to inherit the estate, it was just notarized. The lawyer was very pleased to hear this. Then there's no problem, Ms. Song, rest assured, Ms. Su won't get a single penny, and I will later help you sue Ms. Su to recover every cent Mr. Qin spent on her. I nodded and said, "All right, please have your team work a bit harder and investigate Qin Jiangyi's financial records. I will provide the authorization on my end." Understood, Ms. Song. After communicating with the lawyer, I felt a bit better. To be honest, the shock I received today was quite significant. I was already feeling sad because Qin Jiangyi was about to leave, but then I was hit hard by his first love and his will. What hurt me the most, however, was my son. How could he be so foolish and have such twisted values? Thinking about this, I suddenly made a decision. Children and grandchildren will have their own fortunes, and from now on, I don't want to meddle in his life, or even care about his life or death. When I figured everything out and walked out of the study, I saw Qin Jiangyi, who had been hovering outside the door, glaring at me angrily. "Song Jin, I want to see Su Qian. Take me to see Su Qian right now." I turned around and went back into the study, rolled up the Three Pure Ones painting, stuffed it into my embrace, and carried it back to the bedroom. Once again, the world was quiet. On the other hand, Su Qian and Qin Wenchu ultimately did not handle Qin Jiangyi's funeral arrangements, leaving the body directly in the hospital morgue. When I received the call from the hospital, I was having breakfast. Because I hadn't brought the Sanqing diagram with me, I was once again annoyed by Qin Jiangyi's incessant nagging. 7. So when the hospital told me to come pick up Qin Jiangyi's body as soon as possible, I deliberately put the call on speaker and asked, "What did you say? I didn't hear you clearly." "Ms. Song, your husband's body has been in the morgue for 3 days. Could you please come and take him away? And settle the fees while you're at it," the staff member on the phone said in a professional tone. "The morgue didn't 1111 and the others handle the funeral arrangements for me." Qin Jiangyi was stunned by the staff's words for quite a while. Seeing this, I kindly asked for him. "I remember my son and her Ms. Su were at the hospital at the time. Why didn't they take it with them?" "This is how it was, Ms. Song. At the time, we asked those two, and after learning about the costs, they said it would be better for you to handle it. Since you never came, we had to contact you." Hearing this, I almost laughed out loud. How much was the cost that neither of them was willing to pay? The staff member seemed to recall the situation at the time and couldn't help but complain. We found it strange too. The cost wasn't high, less than 2,000 in total from the hospital to the cremation. They could have found a burial plot themselves, but after hearing about the cost, neither of them was willing to pay. That Ms. Su even asked Mr. Qin, saying, "Is it really okay for us to leave brother Jiangyi here?" She knew it wasn't right, but she didn't want to pay. But that Mr. Qin said, "It's fine. If my mom finds out my dad is at the hospital and wasn't taken to be cremated, she'll definitely come and pay to take him away." Then the two of them left together, leaving only your phone number. To be honest, I'm quite grateful to this staff member for imitating their tone so vividly. Qin Jiangyi's face was filled with disbelief after hearing this. Less than 2,000 yuan. How could they? It seems my husband isn't that great to his first love either. He can't even come up with 2,000 yuan. I said loudly on purpose. Bullshit. I've been the best to 1111, giving her tens of thousands every month and plenty of gifts. How could I not treat her well? As he spoke, he began to realize what he was saying. If he was giving her tens of thousands every month, how could Su 1111 not even come up with a little over 1,000 to help cremate his body? Ignoring Qin Jiangyi's complicated feelings at the moment, I cheerfully said to the person on the phone, "All right then. I won't take the body. Isn't there a body donation program? Let's donate my husband's body. It's a contribution to medical science, isn't it?" Hearing me say that, the staff member on the other end of the phone, connecting it with what I had said earlier, guessed what was going on. "All right, MS, Song. But for the donation, you'll still need to come in and sign the paperwork." The staff member's tone carried a sense of relief, as if a burden had been lifted. "Okay. I'll come over after I have breakfast," I agreed readily. It wasn't until I hung up the phone that Qin Jiangyi realized what I had said. "Song Jin, you venomous woman, even if I wronged you, you can't treat me like this. How could you donate my body?" Qin Jiangyi screamed at me in utter despair, but as long as I pretended not to hear him, he couldn't do anything about it. After all, he couldn't even touch me now. 8. After finishing breakfast, I got ready and drove to the hospital. At the hospital, I found the relevant staff and expressed my wish to donate my body. I suppose the staff member on the phone had already informed them in advance, so after I made my request, the process moved very quickly. Soon, a staff member brought the donation consent form for me to sign. Qin Jiang, seeing me pick up the pen to sign, broke down and shouted beside me, "Don't sign, Song Jin, you are not allowed to sign." But isn't it perfectly normal that I couldn't hear the words of a soul? So I directly picked up the pen and began signing the consent form. Just as I finished signing, Qin Wenchu and Su Qian also arrived. "Auntie Su, I told you. As long as my mom knows my dad's body is still here, she will definitely come. She will pay the money. Don't worry." Qin Wenchu's tone was full of smugness. "Sister, why must you be like this? You refused to pay before, but now you still have to come and pay yourself. It would have been better to pay last time and save Wenchu from being upset." Su Qian also wore a smug smile on her face. "Sister, these past few days, Wenchu and I have also looked at burial plots. After all, Qin Jiangyi is your husband, so of course he deserves a better burial plot. We chose one that only costs 250,000 yuan. You just need to go and pay." Looking at their smiling faces, I just sneered and said, "No need, Qin Jiangyi, he doesn't need a burial plot anymore." This remark left both of them stunned on the spot, unable to understand what I meant. As for Qin Jiangyi, who was floating in the air, this time he didn't rush to his 1111's side. Instead, he watched dejectedly as the staff took away the donation consent form. "Mom, what do you mean by this? If we don't get a burial plot, where will Dad's ashes go? You can't just keep them at home," Qin Wenchu said with a frown. "That's right, sister, no matter how much you can't bear to part with brother Jiangyi, you can't keep his ashes at home. Besides, brother Jiangyi has already given all his assets to me, and the house is mine too. I don't agree to keeping the ashes at home." Su 1111 also expressed her dissatisfaction. Her dissatisfaction brought Qin Jiangyi back to his senses. He looked at Sushi with some confusion. "Shishi, do you dislike my ashes that much?" Unfortunately, Sushi couldn't see him or hear him, so she couldn't answer at all. "Who said there are ashes? I've already donated Qin Jiangyi's body to the national medical cause. He might become a cadaver teacher in some school's classroom in the future." I curled my lips into a smile, picked up my bag, and was about to leave. "Donated?" Qin Wenchu exclaimed in shock. "Mom, how could you donate Dad's body? He should be laid to rest properly. What's all the noise?" I covered my ears. "Why are you shouting so loud? Wasn't it you two who didn't want to keep your dad's body in the morgue? That's taking up someone else's resources, and it's not right. Donating him is doing a good deed, you know." "No, Mom, it's not that we don't care. We wanted you to handle Dad's funeral arrangements. Think, all you do is think. I already said that day, I don't want to deal with that scumbag's funeral arrangements. It was you who left him here. And since I didn't want to handle it, of course, I had to donate him." I spread my hands, indicating it wasn't my fault. Qin Wenchu's face was full of disbelief and regret. But he was left speechless by my words, so he instinctively looked at Sushi, hoping she would help him. Only then did he realize that after hearing about his father's body being donated, Aunt Su hadn't shown any regret or sorrow at all. 9. Qin Wenchu looked at Sushi in surprise, somewhat incredulously asking, "Auntie, are you just going to stand by and watch Dad's body be donated?" Only then did Sushi realize she had appeared too calm, but she quickly adjusted her expression. "Wenchu, how could I bear to have your father's body donated? But now your mother has already signed the papers despite all objections, and there's nothing I can do. After all, I'm not your father's legal wife." Sushi wiped away non-existent tears from the corner of her eye with a sorrowful expression. "And actually, Auntie thinks what your mother did isn't so bad." Qin Wenchu was even more shocked. "Auntie, what are you talking about? Wenchu, listen to me first. With your father gone, and your mother unwilling to handle his funeral arrangements, although I was the love of your father's life, I'm not in a position to officially arrange his funeral. Donating his body not only helps us avoid trouble but also does a good deed for your father. Anyway, this is a contribution to medical science and can be considered as accumulating merit for your father. He was a kind person his whole life and would surely be willing to do this final good deed." After Su Qian finished speaking, Qin Jiangyi was completely overwhelmed. If he could touch physical objects, I suspect he would have grabbed Susie by the shoulders and demanded to know why she said that. 11:11. That's my body. You know my greatest wish is to be laid to rest peacefully and buried with you when you pass away. How could you say I'm willing to donate my body? 11:11. Hurry and ask Wenchu to get my body back. Qin Jiangyi's voice was almost tearful, but unfortunately, Susie couldn't hear a word he said. Instead, it was Susie's words that convinced his son. Qin Wenchu didn't understand at first, but after hearing what Susie said, he immediately calmed down. "So, if we donate my father's body, we don't need to handle the funeral arrangements. And we don't need to buy a cemetery plot either." "That's right. Since the body is donated, there's naturally no need for a cemetery. We can just hold a memorial service for your father." As she spoke, Susie looked over at me. "Sister, you should be the one to organize the memorial service. After all, you are Brother Yi's wife. I will take care of Jiang Yi's wife's funeral arrangements," she said. I sneered and turned to leave. "No funeral." Sushi was stunned. "Why not? If you won't even collect Jiang Yi's body, how can you refuse to hold a memorial service?" "Exactly, Mom. How can you be so heartless?" Qin Wenchu chimed in loudly. "What's there to memorialize about a cheating scumbag with no conscience?" I scoffed coldly. These words made Qin Jiangyi, who was floating nearby, look embarrassed. When he heard that I refused to hold a memorial service for him, he was somewhat angry, but after hearing what I said, he only felt ashamed and awkward. But Susie didn't care. "But if we don't hold a memorial service, how can we announce Brother Jiangyi's will to everyone so I can inherit the inheritance?" "So you want to hold a memorial service for Qin Jiangyi just to read the will and take my family's property? Is that it?" Susie was momentarily speechless, stammering for a long while before finally saying, "Isn't this also Brother Jiangyi's last wish?" Only then did Qin Jiangyi show a disappointed expression toward Susie. 11:11. "After I died, did you ever take a proper look at my body? Why is your mind so fixated on the inheritance?" After saying this, he immediately tried to make excuses for Susie. "But then again, you've been hiding behind me and suffering all your life. It's only natural that you'd feel secure only after getting the inheritance. Brother Jiangyi doesn't blame you." 10. I felt so disgusted by these two that I wanted to vomit. "I don't want to stay here either. There's no way I'm giving you the family property. If you have the guts, go sue me." After saying that, I ignored the two of them and left the hospital directly, then headed straight to the company. Although I haven't been to the company since Qin Jiangyi left, everything there is under my control. Back then, Qin Jiangyi had nothing to his name. It was my father who personally trained him and handed the family company over to him. Since my father passed away, the company has almost entirely fallen into the hands of Qin Jiangyi, making him the largest shareholder. But he didn't know that the mysterious second largest shareholder, who never showed up, was me. Now that he's gone, the shares have come into my hands, and I've become the true largest shareholder of the company. As soon as I arrived at the company, I announced the news of Qin Jiangyi's death and that I would be taking over the company personally. Because I am the biological daughter of the former big boss and the wife of the current big boss, no one opposed this decision. Moreover, I have long since communicated with the senior employees of the company. And there is absolutely no problem in keeping the company firmly in my hands. The second announcement I am making is to cease providing any assistance to Qin Wenchu's company, including investments and procurement. This news did cause surprise among the company's employees. And one bold employee directly asked, "President Song, Mr. Qin's company has always relied entirely on our company's investments and orders to survive. If we stop the orders and investments, I'm afraid Mr. Qin's company will go bankrupt." In fact, Qin Wenchu's company was established back when he had just graduated from university, full of youthful ambition, unwilling to work at his family's company, and determined to start his own business, a small, struggling company, and Qin Jiang and I, fearing he might suffer losses outside, specifically provided him with private assistance. For this, we even voluntarily gave up a portion of the company's dividends. Now that this son of mine is helping an outsider provoke his own mother, naturally, I don't have to care about whether his company lives or dies. The company matters were quickly resolved. Although I hadn't managed the company for many years, I am, after all, the daughter of the strongest entrepreneur of that era, so Qin Jiangyi's passing did not have much impact on the company. However, Suzy and Qin Wenchu couldn't sit still. After discovering that I had stopped assisting Qin Wenchu's company, they finally realized that I truly had no intention of leaving the family assets to Suzy. As a result, Qin Wenchu personally sought out a lawyer to help Suzy with the lawsuit. So when I saw the two of them again, it was in the courthouse. Qin Wenchu seemed to realize that he had gone a bit too far, but he still stood in front of me and said somewhat awkwardly, "Mom, I didn't want it to be like this either, but you're hoarding the family assets and refusing to give them to Aunt Sue. This is a desecration of Dad's last wishes. As his son, I have to help him fulfill them." Suddenly, I realized that now, every time I see this foolish son of mine, I just want to roll my eyes. It's quite disheartening to realize, at over 60 years old, that I've raised such a foolish son. I didn't even acknowledge him and went straight into the courtroom. In the courtroom, Suzy tearfully recounted how unreasonable I was, insisting that although Qin Jiangyi had left a will, I was still holding on to the property he had intended for her. She accused me not only of seizing her property but also of refusing to collect Qin Jiangyi's body and hold a memorial service, calling me a petty and malicious woman. As a witness, my son also repeatedly stated, "I confirm that my father's will is genuine," before he died. He said in front of us that he wanted to leave the family property to Aunt Suzy, but my mother, out of jealousy that Aunt Sue received all of my father's love, refused to hand over the family assets to Aunt Sue. 11. In response to Qin Wenchu's words, I couldn't help but raise a question in court. "Qin Wenchu, you accuse me of monopolizing the family assets and refusing to hand them over, but if I really were to give up the family property, have you ever considered how I would live without any assets? I'm already in my 60s and have lost the ability to work. Do you still expect me to hand over the family money to the mistress?" Qin Wenchu frowned. "Mom, don't call her a mistress. It sounds so harsh. Aunt Sue is Dad's true love. Besides, even if you lose the family assets, you still have me. I'll take care of both you and Aunt Sue." I didn't believe a single word of what Qin Wenchu said. A person who helps the mistress against his own mother, can he really provide for her in her old age? Besides, he will soon be unable to support even his own family. My lawyer quickly responded to Suzy and Qin Wenchu's statements. The lawyer stated, "Your Honor, the inheritance listed in Mr. Qin Jiangyi's will includes the joint marital property of Mr. Qin Jiangyi and MS. Song Jin. Half of it belongs to MS. Song Jin. Mr. Qin Jiangyi had no right to pass it on to others as inheritance." After reviewing the materials, the presiding judge nodded and said, "The statement is valid." This made the two people opposite anxious, as if they had only just realized the issue, after a brief discussion with their lawyer, although unwilling. The two nodded and allowed the lawyer to state that Susie could relinquish the portion of the property that belonged to me, but the remaining half must be given to Susie. Your Honor, I would like to remind the court that Ms. Susie was the third party during Mr. Chin Jung-ee's marriage to Ms. Song Jin. Does Mr. Chin Jung-ee's act of leaving his inheritance to a third party comply with public order and good morals? After reviewing the evidence submitted by the lawyer, the presiding judge once again agreed with the lawyer's viewpoint. When the verdict was announced, the presiding judge declared that all of the plaintiff's claims were dismissed. Both Susie and Chin Wenchu were stunned. They couldn't understand why. Despite the existence of a will, the money wasn't awarded to Susie. Chin Wenchu even caused a scene in the courtroom over this. What kind of lousy presiding judge are you? Have you been bribed by my mother? My Aunt Susie has a will, and my father wanted to give the money to her. Why isn't it being awarded to Aunt Susie? Chin Wenchu thought that by making a scene, the court would change its ruling. Little did he expect that what awaited him were two burly bailiffs. Only after being subdued by the bailiffs did Chin Wenchu realize he was in a courtroom, not at home. If he hadn't backed down in time, he would have been detained. Susie, who didn't get any inheritance, was so envious that her eyes turned red. She sobbed, Song Jin, I've been with Chin Jung-ee for so many years. How dare you take my money away? Seeing his beloved white moonlight crying, Chin Jung-ee panicked. He anxiously tried to wipe Susie's tears but became even more flustered because he couldn't touch her. 11:11, I'm sorry. I never expected Song Jin to be so ruthless, not leaving you a single penny. You've suffered all these years following me, but it's okay. The money I left you before should be enough for your retirement. I'll wait for you forever, and after you pass away, we can be reincarnated together. 12. Susie couldn't hear Chin Jung-ee's comfort and only felt that she had suffered an immense injustice. Seeing that I was ignoring her, she almost sat directly on the ground, losing her previous refined and reasonable demeanor. Did Chin Jung-ee, that bastard, conspire with you to deceive me? He clearly said that everything would be mine after his death, but now I can't get a single penny. If it weren't for his promise, I would have left him long ago, when I was young. I was so beautiful. What kind of man couldn't I find? If it weren't for your family's wealth and his promise to give all the money to me, why would I have stayed with him for a lifetime without any status? You all deceived me, all of you. Sushi was practically wailing at the courthouse entrance. Her tearful confession shocked both Chin Wenchu and his son, Chin Jung-ee, especially Chin Jung-ee, whose face instantly turned pale upon hearing that Susie was only with him for the money. Looking utterly unwilling to believe it, Aunt Susie, weren't you willing to stay by my dad's side because of true love? Pa, what true love? When he was young and penniless, he tried to pursue me. Later, when he had money, he arranged for me to work as a nanny in your house. If he hadn't married into a wealthy family, changed his status, and been willing to spend money on me, do you think I'd even bother with him? Susie rolled her eyes and said, so you never loved my dad at all? You were only with him for his money, otherwise. Do you think your dad was some kind of good man? Actually, I had long wanted to leave your dad back then. After all, what woman doesn't want to properly marry a good man? It was your dad who kept saying he was in poor health and might pass away before me any day, promising he would leave all his inheritance to me when that time came. So I kept waiting and waiting, for the day your dad would pass away. Who knew that waiting would turn into decades? I'm old now and can't find a good match anymore, so I have no choice but to stick with your dad and wait for him to die. Finally, your dad really passed away, and he even wrote a will, but the money can't go to me. Isn't this just bullying an honest person? Watching Susie cry so bitterly, I actually felt she was both pitiful and ridiculous. Waiting for me to die. Chin Jung-ee seemed to wake from a dream, looking at Susie with grief and anger. Susie, I've done so many outrageous things for you in this lifetime. For you, I seized my wife's family company. For you, I betrayed my wife. I even let you raise my own son and made him close to you, all because I was afraid you'd be mistreated after I died, and here I thought you were actually hoping for my death. Susie, you bitch, I'm going to kill you. Chin Jung-ee lunged at Susie like a madman. But without a physical body, he couldn't even touch the hem of her clothes. As I watched this farce unfold before me, I couldn't help but find it ridiculous. At this moment, Qin Jiangyi actually shifted all the blame for everything he had done onto Suzy, claiming it was all for her sake. Men really have no shame. Qin Wenchu then realized that the aunt he had been helping all along was actually this kind of person. With reddened eyes, he said, "Su Qian, you bitch, I stood up against my own mother for you. And now you're telling me that all these years you stayed by my dad's side just for the money. Were you so nice to me just because of my dad's money too? Otherwise, Su Qian, unable to get the money, didn't hold back either. What makes you think you're such a good kid? You've been disobedient and annoying since you were little. If it weren't for your dad's money, why would I ever be so nice to you? Not only am I good to you, but I also indulge you excessively. Whatever your mother forbids you to do, I insist you do it. I'm deliberately raising you to be useless, so that if I ever have a child, you won't be able to compete with mine. It's just a pity your father is so useless. All these years he hasn't given me a child. You've been ruined by my upbringing too. You're worthless now." 13. Suzy's words delivered an overwhelming shock to Qin Jiangyi and his father. Qin Wenchu was the first to break down. "What do you mean I've been raised into a useless person by you? So since I was little, you deliberately told me in front of me that my mother's high expectations meant she didn't love me. You deliberately withdrew me from all those tutoring classes, and you deliberately let me indulge in fun and games, all to intentionally make me useless. This can't be true. You're lying. How could I have been raised into a useless person? In what way am I useless?" Qin Wenchu refused to accept this reality. Even I was shocked. It turns out that when Qin Wenchu was young and didn't do well in school, all the tutoring classes and training programs I signed him up for were cancelled. Qin Jiangyi drifted beside Sushi with a dejected expression, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Back then, you said you couldn't bear to see my child suffer, that he was still young and there was no need to focus solely on grades. You told me to let you take over his education, and I listened to you. Cancelling all his classes as you suggested, was all of that? All of it just your scheme to ruin my son?" Qin Jiangyi's accusation went unheard by Sushi, but Qin Wenchu's accusation was answered by Sushi. "Otherwise, look at yourself now. If it weren't for your father's company helping you, do you really think your business could survive? You're in your 40s, and with just a few words from me, you even betrayed your own mother. Do you still think you're some kind of capable person?" Suzy's words had too great an impact on Qin Wenchu, causing him to be unable to accept it and immediately rush forward to grab Suzy by the neck, wishing he could strangle her. However, since we were in the courthouse, staff quickly restrained Qin Wenchu. "This old bitch deceived my father his whole life and now wants to ruin my life too. I want to kill her." Qin Wenchu's furious and irrational outburst quickly led to him being subdued by the bailiffs, at Suzy's strong insistence. He was directly taken to the police station. When I was leaving, Qin Wenchu frantically shouted at me, "Mom, I was wrong. Please save me." "Mom, of course, I didn't pay any attention." Instead, I looked at Sushi, who was acting crazy on the ground, and said, "Sushi, are you satisfied now?" "Not satisfied." Sushi, with red eyes, screamed at me like a madwoman, "I'm not satisfied. Qin Jiangyi's money should all be mine, if it weren't for you occupying my position as Mrs. Qin Jiangyi's inheritance would rightfully be mine." Looking at her self-righteous expression, I nodded with amusement and said, "You're right, if you were Mrs. Qin, that money would indeed be yours. It's just a shame that you're not. So, for the past few decades, every penny Qin Jiangyi spent on you was actually from me. Mrs. Qin, it was never meant for you. So, Suzy, just wait, I will sue you as Mrs. Qin to reclaim our marital assets." Hearing this, Suzy panicked. "Reclaim? How is that possible? Qin Jiangyi gave it to me willingly. Shall I educate you on the law? Marital assets spent on a mistress are invalid. I have the right to demand their return. You'd better go home and start gathering the money. I've already had someone check all of Qin Jiangyi's transfer records while he was alive. Not a single cent will be missing." No, this can't be. How can money given to me be taken back?" Suzy refused to believe it, shouting at me hysterically. "But what's the use anyway? When she received the court summons, she consulted every lawyer she could find, only to be told that every penny she had spent must be returned. She completely broke down, crying and begging over the phone for me to let her off. Song Jin, I was really wrong. I'm old now with no income. I simply don't have the money to pay you back. Please just let me go. On the phone, Su Qian cried as if her heart was breaking. But how did she treat me back when I was hurt by them? I didn't shed a single tear. If you don't have money, just become a deadbeat. The house you live in, the car you drive, the bags you use, the clothes you wear, they'll all be auctioned off. You can even go pick up trash to save money and pay me back. Of course, given your age and compared to the money Qin Jiangyi gave you, you'll probably be picking up trash until you die. After saying that, I hung up the phone directly and urged the lawyer to speed up the process to recover all the money from Sushi as soon as possible. After all, I, Song Jin, am no saintly white lotus. If you dare scheme against me, you must pay the price. After hearing my decision, Qin Jiangyu didn't yell at me this time, telling me not to bully his 1111. Instead, he clapped and cheered on the side. Yes, that's my wife for you. That's exactly how you should deal with that bitch Su Qian. Thank you, my dear, for avenging me. Hearing this made me sick to my stomach. 14. Just as I was getting up to go out, Qin Wenchu was released from the detention center. At this moment, he looked utterly haggard. As soon as he saw me, he knelt down directly and said, "Mom, I was wrong. I've come to apologize to you. Please calm down. You cut off the support for my company, and now my company has gone bankrupt. That old bitch Sue, she has swindled almost all of my money. After my wife found out, she wants to divorce me and take our daughter with her. Mom, please help me." Qin Wenchu had tears in his eyes, appearing both obedient and sorrowful, as if he had truly realized his mistake and was ready to change. This pitiful state would indeed soften any mother's heart. Unfortunately, his mother is me. When I think of what he, my own son, did to me right after I was about to lose my husband, I just can't bring myself to forgive him. It seems my daughter-in-law is quite clear-headed. Luckier than I was. All right. Go home and tell your wife that after the divorce, I will take care of her and our granddaughter. As for you, Qin Wenchu, from the moment you stood by Su Qian's side, you ceased to be my son. I got up and walked right past him. He still wanted to come up and cling to my leg to block my way, but he was stopped by the bodyguards I had arranged in advance. Throw him out and don't let him get near my house again. After giving the order to the bodyguards, I went straight to the garage to drive out. In the car, Qin Jiangyi kept chattering non-stop. Song Jin, I know you're very angry about this matter, but Wenchu is, after all, your own son. You can't just ignore him. It's all my fault. If you want to blame someone, blame me, even if Wenchu made mistakes. You should forgive him for the sake of him being your own flesh and blood. Just as I was about to go crazy from his nagging, we finally arrived at our destination. Qin Jiangyi hadn't noticed that I had already parked the car, and he continued saying, "Honey, if we can start over in the next life, I will treat you well and make you happy. Please forgive Wenchu. There's no need to wait for the next life. I can be happy in this lifetime." Suddenly hearing my response, Qin Jiangyi looked at me in shock. "Honey, you can hear me?" I nodded. "I can see you too." Upon hearing this, Qin Jiangyi looked excited. "Honey, it seems we are truly meant for each other. Don't worry, from now on, I will stay by your side and accompany you for the rest of your life." I sneered at his words. "You're dead, so our marriage is dissolved. Stop calling me honey. Besides, for the sake of my happiness in the remaining years of my life, you'd better not stick around and disgust me," I said as I got out of the car. Qin Jiangyi looked puzzled. "Song Jin, are you still angry? I know cheating was my fault, but didn't you manage to protect our family assets? Why are you still upset?" He anxiously chased after me, completely unaware that he had followed me into a temple. The moment he entered the temple, Qin Jiangyi's soul was immobilized by a talisman. A Taoist priest in a robe stepped forward and said, "Ms. Song, your husband's spirit has been subdued. He will no longer appear by your side in the future." I nodded and said, "Then I must trouble you, priest, to properly refine this evil spirit from now on. Make sure he doesn't escape, and don't let him live too comfortably either." Don't worry, any evil spirit that enters our Zhenling temple will experience something comparable to the 18 layers of hell. With that, I was finally at ease. And after paying the priest the appropriate incense money, I turned and left without hesitation, completely ignoring the pleading look in Qin Jiangyi's eyes. Did he think that betraying me would be fine as long as he died? I, Song Jin, have always been one to repay every slight. Even in death I will make your soul pay the price.